And I was like, well, all of us dance teachers say that at least once in our livelihood of somebody. And I was just like, whatever. So then when we left, Abby put her arms around me and said, I need more friends like you. And I was so touched by that because Abby is truly, hold on for a minute, honey, you can drop it now. Just stand there like your Cecil B. DeMille. Anyhow, so Abby is truly a talented, creative person. And I started to feel like in my early years of having the dance studio that I constantly wanted to look at Abby's stuff on her website and that because she's so creative. But anyhow, when we left, that's what she said to me. So then that winter, it was right after Christmas. I was surfing the web and I was looking at her stuff because it's very creative. And I saw where it said that Hollywood was coming to the Berg. And I was like, whoa, wonder what that means. So I kept reading it. Well, then I reached out to her and I said, hey, Ab, is this just for people in Pennsylvania or can Ohioans come? And at the time, Vivi was, I think she was 6. Yeah, she was 6. And Abby knew what Vivi looked like. Beautiful, beautiful child. And she said, oh my God, Cathy, they would love you. And she was very good friends with the one creator, which was John Corella, which he has his own podcast. And can you believe he has not asked me to be on it? It's mind-boggling to me because he
Wow.
was on mine at one point. Well, I had like a little show, not a podcast. But anyhow, so I don't want to get off the beaten path. So I started to get information from him. He called me and said, now mind you, Vivi's 6. What goals does your child have? Does she want to be a superstar in dance? And I'm like, whatever. I just want to get Vivi on TV. But I had no idea what reality TV was. The only reality show that I ever watched was John and Kate Plus 8 because those kids were the same age as Vivi, and I wanted to make sure that Vivi was on track. So I would watch that to see what they were doing. So I had no idea, none. So we went to the audition, and it was a blustery, cold February day. And Vivi, oh, she looked so cute. They said, put her in a costume. So she had this little costume on, and Vivi was a quiet child. And the whole way to Pittsburgh, my husband and my mom went with me. And she was just chatting. I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that. Well, by the time that we got in, we were like 3 hours late and she was done. She wasn't having it. She had shut down, was not saying a word. So Brian Stinson, who is now the producer of the new Dance Moms
Which
and
we'll talk about later on.
Brian, right, which we'll talk about later on. Um, he did, it was like a screen test, basically. So I sat and he fed me some questions and wanted to know how I was going to answer them. Well, they were all questions that were like, is your husband upset that you spend thousands of dollars on dance? And it was like, finally, I stopped him and I said, look, I am not what you're looking for. I am a dance teacher. My husband wants me to have people buy into competition and it puts a roof over our heads. We want a successful business. So I'm not what you're looking for. Well, Vivi was not talking, and I kept saying things like, honey, say how old you are, whatever, say something, open up your mouth so he knows you can speak. So by the time that we got finished, he was kind of goading me. Well, I don't really think that your kid wants this. I don't really think. And I was like, kind of getting irritated. And I was like, she's a little girl. We've waited for 3 hours. She's kind of over it. So I looked at Vivi because eating was very important to Vivi. And he had kind of like stopped the camera because I was like, I'm done. And I got up and I said, honey, show the man some sugars, which is a step. And he stood there and he kind of coaxed the camera over. And she shook her head no. And I leaned down and I said, Vivi, are you hungry? And she went, and I went, well, I'm not going to feed you until you show him some sugars. Nail in coffin. I am hired.
Wow.
I was the first person that was cast on the show. So then the next couple things that happened were funny. As we were leaving, we were going out to eat with Abby. And we went to that Mohans, which you see on the show in the early seasons. I had no idea. And so when we were leaving, Brian came running out and said, do we have headshots of you? And I was like, I don't think so. I'm like real low key. I don't like the attention. I like to be flamboyant and I like to be ostentatious, but I don't like people to come at me that way.
Which is why I
So,
appreciate you coming on the show because I know this is something you don't do much, so I appreciate it.
yeah. So, I'm like, no, I don't think so. And I walked out the door. As we're riding home, I say to my husband and my mom, I'm not getting involved with that. So about maybe 4 weeks later, I get an email. We need pictures of you immediately. I walk down and I say to my mom, because she lives with us, she has a huge mother-in-law house that's attached to our house. I say to my mom, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it at all. So about 6 weeks later, it's now kind of springish. Oh, it's probably like, let's see, that was in February. It's probably like Marchish. You know the scene in Dirty Dancing when
Yes.
she is going to the party and she's carrying a watermelon and he comes up to her and she tries to say something very cool and she goes, I'm carrying a watermelon. That was me because I get this phone call. Cathy, this is Brian Stinson from Collins Avenue, did the Dance Mom producer. And I'm like, hey, I'm behind a school bus. I have no idea why I said that. Hey, I'm behind a school bus. So then he started to pursue and talk to us. And the next thing I'm on the show.